Hi, Richard, back again. Welcome to part 2 of the renovation and upgrade of my LGB 2062. So, progressing. I've done the DCC, the motion and the lights that I wanted. So the next part, this part is the smoke, getting the smoke in there, which is not original. And then I'm going to try and put some servos in, which I've done before, but this time I'm going to try and do it to move the couple of hooks, front and rear, and perhaps, which I haven't done before, but I've put a servo in to move the driver to change direction. So there's the two crewmen are sitting down, so that's going to make it a bit more interesting how to work that out with their legs sticking out in front. But we'll see how that goes. And also I'm just going to do some paint work, paint all these handrails and things black, a bit more weathering. I was going to put stripes on and stuff like that, but I think I'll leave it as is. Just weather it down. And there was one thing I want to do, which is these are the buffer beams which go on here, and these have little bolt heads or rivet heads or something perhaps on them. I want to put wasp stripes in black on here, so sort of a feature from the 50s sort of thing on these shunting locos. But with these bolt heads on there, I can't use masking tape or use lining tape, pinstripe tape. So I'm not sure how I'm going to do that. I think I might just paint it on by hand, see how that goes. Alright, smoke. Now, if you can see here, the I have fitted the chimney. So originally there was nothing there. There was just one of these little silver air vents, and that was in the centre of this space between the cab and the whistle. So what I did was, well, I wanted to use a chimney, looked at making something out of tubing, but didn't look right. So I got this, which is a piece of a chimney. So it was longer than that. It was about that long, and it was the straight chimney from my U43 Zillital. So it's just an LGB straight chimney. And but I didn't want to put it up that way. It looked a bit steam-like, so I turned it up the other way and cut the bottom of it off, and got that. So I did. The walls of this chimney are quite thick, almost 2 mil thick. So I've drilled carefully drilled that out, so it gives the top of the chimney is not too thick. It's just like a light metal. And similarly with the base. Now I wanted to be able to take the chimney off in order to load poke the smoke fluid down. I didn't want to run the fine smoke fluid tube right up to the top, because that would give a very thin jet rather than a more diffuse plume of smoke. So I've ended the thin tube from the smoke generator about this height, so it's got this upper part in order to spread out and be not so thick and not such a jet. So there's a little bit of a curve on the top of the boiler, so on top of the engine cover, so I've curved that, and that goes on there. Now, so I cut the hole, I cut another piece of tube, different plastic tube from garden hose fitting. So I've cut that and cut that down so it fits on there, so I can and that's glued in, so I can easily fit the chimney, or I can take it off and fill the oil. Well, that's the plan. So that is done. Simple to describe, but it took me quite a lot of fiddling and working it out and filing. Without going too far, I'd tried to do this on a different chimney and using power tools, and cut a hole in the chimney instead of start filing it down, so mostly done by hand. Anyway, that's good. Now the space inside where the chimney, where the smoke generator's got to go. So having a quick look, this is the smoke generator from ESU. Sorry, I'll take that off. That's a smoke generator from ESU. I've put some tape around it because these wires are very fine and soldered onto the little panel in there. And previously, with movement, I've had the wires come off, and then they're very hard to solder back on. And as you can see, the fineness of the wires. On this end, I've put my customary 6-pin plug, so I can disconnect this, and then I run the same wire colours through to the decoder. Just to mention on the decoder, these don't use one of the standard function outputs. It's not AUX 6 or 7. They use the smoke ESU specific smoke outputs. So there's it uses track power, 5 volts, heater plus and minus, and the fan plus and minus. So that's off the top of my head. So you just wire those up. Now where to put it, got a small plastic box from the electronic shop. It's called a potting box. So you're supposed to put your components in there and glue them up, but it's just the perfect size, and I can put the smoke generator in there. And the advantage of that is that this is a one-piece box. There's no lid, but it's a box, and that will stop overflowing smoke fluid going down into the electronics and the motor and so on. And that seems to often happen. You overfill a little bit, or you tilt the motor. So I think the fluid goes in, and there's the fan there, for example. So if you overfill it and then turn it up, it'll come out through the fan hole, air intake. So I'm not sure how to fit that in there. I think just probably some tape, and then I can glue that down to the top of the motor block, or with double-sided tape, and then it should be alright. So I'll experiment with that and getting it in and out, and then I'll show you how it goes. In the end, trying to make things fit a little bit more easily, I did cut a hole in the firewall, or in the front of the cab, without cutting through the grey firewall inside the cab, and cut down the box as much as possible, but still leave it intact, so it does fit in there reasonably well. Bit of room for the wire to come out, and it means that the tubing is pretty much straight going up, so that'll make it easier to fit. So saves a bit more room inside the engine compartment there for the wiring, and keeps it out of the way of the speaker. So I think that's the best solution in the end. And now we can try it out. Cheers. I've also put it on the track outside and done the auto calibrate, so it's running a little, well, quite a bit smoother. Runs very nicely now, and speed step 1, it's just visibly moving. It's really good. So that's looking good too. So just to show you how the smoke's going, I've decreased the amount of smoke a little bit, and I think it looks pretty good. So we'll try it now. So smoke on. So that starts the heat up. It doesn't actually show anything until we get the sound on. So it fairly well synchronises with the actual sound. It's not much smoke when it's idling. Just steady smoke. Then we accelerate. Smoke backs off a little bit. Change direction. Speed step 1. Speed step 5. So I'll just rev up. Smoke, but not overly much. So it's all looking pretty good, yeah. So the headlights and the bell function. The lights also operates in shunt mode. So it's all looking pretty good. So the next step now is to look at these servos. So okay, these are the servos that I'm going to use. This little one is Tower Pro micro servo. So it's a 180 degree servo. So it comes with a number of different arms which go on the little gear on the top. So that turns, at full motion, that turns 180 degrees, and you can control the speed, and you control the start position and the end position of the arm. So what I use that for is to make the driver turn round, for example. So cut the driver off at the hips, glue him on there, and then you can, by using control from the decoder, you can turn around 180 degrees when you activate that function. 3 wires. The orange and the brown is positive and negative, one way or the other way around, and the yellow is the digital signal, control signal. So those outputs are on special outputs on the decoder. And I've got the little 3-wire plugs, 3-pin plugs, which I'll use to put in the wire so I can detach them. That's fairly straightforward. I know that works. What I have done though is purchase these. These are very little miniature servos from model aircraft or similar. And this is a linear servo, so that vertical arm moves backwards and forwards. It's got about 1 centimetre throw and reasonable power. So 1 centimetre is enough to lift up the hook, or lift up the arm at the bottom of the hook so that the hook drops down. Well, progressing with the servos, the first thing I've done is to wire up the servos so I can check that they're working correctly in the right direction and so on. So I've connected the the brown wire is the negative and the red wire is the positive. I think that's 5 volts, and the yellow is the impulse, imp 1. That's 3 wires for servo 1 on the adapter board. They're just above the speaker wires on the adapter board. And the other 3 there to the right, the vacant ones next to the yellow, that's for the servos for the cab, for the crewman. So the drive for the couplers, they'll both drive off the same wires. So I've got the 3 wires, the proper colours, so I split them there, and then each servo, where are they there, comes with the red, black and white, and that flows through these little plugs which are supplied, so I don't have to attach extra plugs, and then I've wired that through through the coder. Okay, loco's on the track now. I've got the cab throttle running, so that's the front servo there, and that's the rear servo, and we're in production. That will be hanging down like that, and the one at the front will go the other way. But when I operate them, I want them to both go upwards. I've got the servo function set up. Aux 17 is set to servo, and then I've set function 16 to be the uncoupling function. So we'll hit function 16 and we'll see what we get. So that's in that position, that's up position. It's down, and that one's down as well. So hit it again. That's gone upwards, which is correct, and so has that. Okay, so that's working as we want. Make a little bit of noise, but that seems to be normal. Currently in the CVs for the servo function, it's set to full range of motion, and it's set to fairly high speed, but we want it to work that sort of speed, not take 2 minutes to operate. So that's all looking good. So what we'll do now is look at where the servos are going to go, and instead of putting them in the body and then having to try to be able to disconnect it and so on when taking the body off, I've decided to mount the servo inside the chassis, just at the front above the coupler, which will go in there, and I'll cut out a small section of the ballast weight front and rear and make room for that, and put some weight back in somewhere else. So let's have a look at that. Well, I've got the first servo installed, half installed. So first of all, you can see just there in the arm of the hook that drops down, I've drilled a hole, not right at the back but a little bit up, so it gives more direct upwards pull and a little bit shorter throw, so it seems to be alright. It's just a very thin piece of wire out of a multi-strand wire, and it's just twisted, goes through and twists, and that comes up through the floor of the chassis there. I've taken the ballast weight out to make room, and I'll have to cut a piece out of the ballast, and it's to go back in. But the servos there, you can just see a little hole in the floor where the wire comes up, and the servo is stuck on there with some double-sided tape, and the wire comes through up into the little arm, which is there in the downward position. So we can see it now. So that's up and down. So you can see the hook up and down. So the hook is, when it goes down, it's down far enough to clear the hook on the other. When the hook goes down, it's for it to have to miss the loop on the other side. So a couple of points. I mounted the servo in with hot glue before, but I found that if there's any resistance to the motion of the arm, that the servo would get very hot and would melt the hot glue and the whole thing would fall apart. And in fact, while that happened a couple of times, the hot glue got on into the gears of the motor, and it's completely locked up, the first servo. So this is the second one of the pair. So if the tape doesn't work, I'll have to try araldite. There are 4 screw holes in the servo, but they're so tiny I haven't got any screws that will fit them, so I'd have to really hunt, and there's not really a way to make a sort of a plastic moulding. Maybe there is. Just briefly, the servos, it's at position A when the hook is normal, and that's position A, and you set the position, that's a high number, which is down the bottom, and then when I activate function 16, it activates auxiliary 17, which is the servo, and moves to position B, which is a low number, which is up near the top, and it moves upwards at speed B, which is a bit slower, and then when you take the function off, it goes back to position A down the bottom a little bit faster, because it's the spring helps it, and it doesn't need to have a slow speed. So all looks pretty good. Uses about 60% of the movement of the servo, so there's a little bit of spare room, but seems to be alright. So I'll go ahead and do the other servo once I bought another one, and put it up the back, and then cut the weights, put them in. I've already done the wiring as you saw before, so that's looking good. So we're halfway there. Okay. Right, here's the servo in position with its double-sided tape underneath, and you can maybe just see the wire. It's silver. I did cut off the outer hole from the arm because I'm using the center hole, so that's fine. Now this is the ballast weight, which from the front, and so I've cut this piece out of the center of the forward end. It's not exactly on the center because the servos, one has the wire on the left and the arms towards the right, whereas the other one has got the wire on the right and the arm towards the left. So you have to have the right one if you've got this type of servo. But that's cut out, so I've cut out the big U shape for the body of the servo, and then another further deeper slot for the arm. So I don't know how much weight I've cut out. The ballast weights are 600 gram each, so maybe 10-15 gram. So I can weigh the weights again when I've finished, and I'll see how much ballast I have to add back. Okay, so that goes straight in, carefully. It'll drop in. So it drops in just where it was, and the servo's down there, hopefully. And if I've just filed a little bit of the edge of the weight so that the wire from the servo can fit in there under the floor, so it has to be pretty flat to fit under the floor. So there's 2 plastic washers and screws go in there, but I won't put them in yet. I'll just put them on the track and see if everything's working. Hi there, it's been a month or two and I haven't had much time to work on this with non-railway activities, but some progress in the last week or so, so I'll show you what I've been doing. First up, I've got the wasp stripes on the front and rear now. I ended up doing them with it's black pinstriping tape from the auto shop, and by measuring carefully I've just laid the tape on by hand and cut around the ends, and where the bolts, the moulded in bolts cut through the tape, I just cut around it with the razor blade, fitted it on as best I can, touched up with black paint and coat of flat spray acrylic clear. Looks great. So it's probably not perfect if you look up close, but it does look really good. The other thing I've done is get the couplings working. So if I can just show you that there. Function on, comes down quite well, and back up, and I've got the rear one as well. Get down low. And I've got a timer on it now. After 5 seconds it goes back up again without if I don't release the function key. The purpose of that is that I did seemingly blow up the decoder while experimenting with that, and one of the servos, the little servos in there, was jammed at the time, so I was trying to drive it up and without being able to move, and so I think that's what caused an overload. The servo itself became very hot, too hot to touch, so I think that's probably not a good sign. So there it is working, and down again. So they're glued on just with super glue, because they're very small, but you've got to be very careful not to get the glue on any moving parts, otherwise you've got to throw it away and buy another one. So that's the one at the back, and you can't quite see, probably there's a wire coming up through the, very fine wire coming up through the floor and connecting onto that arm, and another one at the front. So that's all in and working, so I'm going to start reassembling and putting it all back together with that on there. So I've put the floor on, lead some of the wires up through the floor into the engine bay. There's quite a lot of wires, but it does fit with a bit of fiddling. Also, I've got the crewman in there, driver's on the other side, and he's there, and he turns around to look out the back if they're in reverse, or turns to the front. So he'll go inside the cab when I fit that. Okay, well, my 2062 is complete. I've got the couplers on the front working from function 6 and the front and rear. I've completed all the paint work, with all the black and so forth, the chimney, little vent, 2 vents on the roof, matte paint work. There's the crewman in there, the driver, the original driver, and the shunter standing back having a ride. Little highlights on the paint the chassis black, leaving the counterweights red, so on. Wasp stripes on there. That one's coming off. Glue that down. Wasp stripes front and back, and a bit of grime and so on, and pretty much as we want it. So I'll put her on the test track now, and we'll have a last look, and I'll have some video on the on the main line. So okay, we're on the test track now. Put the track power on. Fire up the sound and the lights. Sounds. Bear in mind, this is the ESU decoder with the German V36
diesel, shunting diesel sound file. Ditch lights on there, headlights on. So we've got shunt mode. Put the smoke in a second. High pitch whistle, low pitch whistle, as well as the horn. What else we got? Now the couplers. Same on the back. What other functions have we got? Well, I've got the lights in reverse, of course. Taillights, headlight goes out. Well, then most of the other sound effects. Shutting the doors. We've got sanding sound. Brake. We've got the radio. 4 radio tracks. Okay, last couple ones. Cab light comes on. I've also put these what I call truck lights. They're 3 on each side. They're small LEDs. I'll show you the LEDs in a moment. Which ones I ended up using. I'll just try it with the lights off. So that's the truck lights with the lights off at night. A little bit bright perhaps. I'll tone them down a bit with the CV, take the power down a little bit. But it's all looking pretty good. One last thing's the smoke. I've demonstrated this before, but it's the ESU large, small smoke generator. Just fits in there. So when that's idling, then when you fire up, smoke increases. Pretty good. Might put some couple of baffles in the chimney so it's not quite such a jet of smoke, but that's a bit of a work in progress. And smoke off. It's amazing how fast the smoke stops. Okay, well that's about it for now. We'll try it out on the track. Okay, so just a quick bit on what I did with these undercarriage lights. I've used these little LEDs in there. So they're a flat, I'm sure you could call them surface mount, but I guess they are. But they're about 5mm square. And what they are is the LEDs off these lead strips that you can buy. They're 12 volts, and you buy them in a roll, and you can snip them up into sections. So there's 3 LEDs in a section, and they've got the little contacts for 12 volts. But I didn't want to operate 12 volts, the lights. I'd have to throttle it down from 18 to 12, and I needed to split them up into sections. And if you cut them up, then it's not easy to use them individually. But what I did was, if I cut them right up at the edges of each light, and then the lights on those 3 feet on one side, they're all common, and there's 3 on the other side. So just solder straight onto there. You don't need to solder them individually. They'll basically work as common. So they're just, and I found they're much easier to solder. I was trying very small surface mount LEDs, 2mm by 1mm and so on, with very fine wires that you can buy them already wired up. But be wary of the ones which are 12 volts each, because you've got a lot of current going through and they've just got resistors. So with these, there's no resistors. There's a small one in the whole circuit. All 6 are on the same circuit in series, 3 on one side and 3 on the other. So that works pretty well. Yeah, the small ones, they're so small that I couldn't see the wire hardly to solder it, and stripping the wire to solder, again, it's like fishing line, trying to strip some fishing line. So these work better for me anyway. I just did the wiring on the outside with black wire and glued it in. It's pretty rough, but you can't see it under the chassis there very easily. And that wire goes through, and there's one plug to connect it to one of the function outputs, which is a lighting function. So that's how we did the lights. Okay, that's it, and I'll show it to you on the test track now.